Most sci-fi and fantasy writers have a story idea they know has potential, but they're not always sure how to shape it into a premise that actually supports a full novel. If you've ever had a hard time moving from idea to draft so that it sticks the landing, or you currently have an idea that's fuzzy, or you're just not sure if it's quite there yet when you try to turn it into a novel, this session is for you because I'm coaching writers live through the rough drafts of their story premises so they can see what is working, what could use sharpening, and how to shape it into the type of premise that can guide their novels and keep them on the right track. So let's get started. We're going to take the premise idea you already have and make it clearer, stronger, and more emotionally resonant. So it actually helps you write the book you want to write. So I'm pulling up my premise submissions. I got quite a flood of them. And so that was great. Really good problem to have. Let me see how I can share this to you. Oh, it worked. Good, good. So, um, all right. So the first one I have here is from Emma. So what I've done is I have just the premise. I have what was submitted as the genre and the age category, but I have that hidden so that I can just take a look at these, not knowing really anything about them, and make sure they're making the right promises. So that's just going to be kind of our first level test. So let's go through that right now. Okay, so Eliana, a not so gifted fire wielder, enters into the crowned trials in order to save her brother from being imprisoned for something he didn't do while trying not to be distracted by the full of himself womanizing Prince Rowan. Okay, so that sounds like so much fun already. Um, so I love that. Now, I'm going to say that this is probably young adult. I mean, she's saving her brother, so that's going to give us, um, kind of that family dynamic and stuff. I mean, it doesn't mean it can't be adult, but I just have a feeling that this is probably a more YA topic, and obviously fantasy and trying not to be distracted by the full of himself, womanizing Prince Rowan gives me romantasies. So let's see if that is correct. Yes, fantasy romance, young adults. So it's making really good promises and it's making good on them. So that's off to a great start. Enters into the crown trials in order to save my brother from being imprisoned for something he didn't do while trying not to be distracted. Okay, so what I think I'm missing here a little bit is what Eliana actually wants. I mean, so she's a not so gifted fire wielder. So there's some good indications there already. Like she maybe doesn't feel like she's good enough for things. I mean, saving her brother is a very noble cause, right? But is there a way we can sneak in something that's a little bit more personal, a little bit more internal tension for Eliana? That would be my advice there. So maybe it could be, it could even be at the end of this actually. So I'm kind of thinking it could be like, oh, and did you do this in one sentence? You did this in one sentence. Awesome. So that was really tight. I love that. But I would say go ahead and use that second sentence if you want to split this, and then at the end you could say something like, um, not try not to be distracted by the fool of himself, womanizing Prince Rowan, because if she does, uh, I don't know, she might, I don't know, like lose the heart she was trying to safeguard, or, whatever it might be. Like that would be something you could add there, Emma, to just kind of give us more of what is at stake personally for Eliana, besides kind of that external, like saving her brother stakes. So I think this is really close. I think it's really good. I think just adding something in there to give us more of her internal side of things, or at least her stakes in it, too, kind of besides saving her brother. Not that that isn't enough, especially for, like, a guiding premise, but when we're trying to make this useful for you, and using it to guide either your revision, your draft, and keeping it all on track, like, what's really guiding it for Eliana? So, that's my advice for Emma. I'm gonna keep moving because, like I said, I got a lot of these, so I'm gonna try to get to as many as I can. I don't think I'll be able to get everyone's in, so I'm sorry about that, but I will try to, get to as many as I can. So Josette sent, when her grandmother is found dead, Ivy Bissonette must take her place as heir to the dynasty while searching for the murderer. Male family members push for control over the Bissonette business dealings, and Ivy must use every bit of her headstrong nature to keep them at bay. Bissonette women have never allowed men to take their magic, and Ivy will not lay down for her cousins to steal hers. Okay, so first of all, let's try genre and age category. So could be YA, but it's giving me kind of maybe more adult vibes. We'll see. And uh, let's see, magic. So maybe paranormal mystery or dynasty. Could be like more epic fantasy too. Let's see. Let's go ahead and take a look, and then we'll see what we can do about that. Urban fantasy adult. Okay, so that actually, I mean, that makes sense. You could also say, I mean, it is like a murder mystery, right? So you could actually just say murder mystery, and you did say adult. So yeah, I was getting adult vibes from it, so I think that's good. Um, we've got 3 sentences here, and of course, I like to get it as tight as possible to 2 sentences, if we can, so that it's clear that it's tight enough to ground what you do moving forward. So, when her grandmother is found dead, Ivy must take her place as the heir to the dynasty while searching for the murderer. Okay, so we've got the male family members pushing for control, and Ivy must use every bit of her headstrong nature to keep them at bay. Yeah, so I think something in tightening these last 2 sentences together would be good. Um, they're kind of saying some of the same things, so you could probably just tighten and combine that into kind of one tighter, stronger sentence to just really, really guide this. Maybe, male family members push for control. What if you just replaced this part, the male family members push for control, into maybe kinda combining this in, so maybe like, okay, so Ivy must take her place as the heir to the dynasty while searching for the murderer. Um, on or like something like on top of that, or meanwhile, she must also use every bit of her headstrong nature to keep her male family members, um, from taking control or from, yeah, something like that, from taking control over the business dealings. And I mean, if you really wanted to add that in, because it is fun, like, you could say something like, "Because Bissonnette women have never allowed men to take their magic," and, like, Ivy's not about to, like, let that happen or something. But I'm missing a bit of a connection here. So, I think what could also help is, yeah, so she has to take her place as the heir to the dynasty while searching for the murderer. And then, like, how does that tension maybe keep her, um, from being as effective? Like, I'm guessing this means the male family members are seeing this as an opportunity to kinda sneak right in there and steal it up from under her where she's kind of preoccupied. So, what can you do to kinda show, like, how that creates that gap there? That might be a way to kinda pull those things together a little bit more. I'm trying to think of an elegant way to do that quickly, and I don't know if I have it quickly, but, so, like, when her grandmother found dead, what if you just split those 2? So when her grandmother is found dead, Ivy must take the place, or Ivy must search for her murderer. Mm, I don't like that as an opening, but but so what I'm trying to do is, like, if you have, like, she must search for the murderer. However, like, that creates um, this, like, tension or opportunity for her, and that these male family members have a way in now, because however, if she's too busy with that, um, the male family members might take over. So maybe there's a way you can kind of tie those 2 together a little bit, instead of just kind of the, like, she must do this while searching for the murderer. I do like the tension that that inherently creates already, but you also have this other piece of these male family members trying to take over. So if you can kind of show, like, that, like, I don't know, or if she doesn't find him soon, or if she doesn't find the murderer soon, um, she's gonna, like, lose her chance to, um see, she doesn't, yeah. Yeah, so maybe something like that. Like, if Ivy doesn't find the murderer, or if she lets that distract her, um, the male family members might sneak in on her, and, like, kinda steal it out from under her or something like that. I don't know if that's what's actually taking place, but, whatever the case might be, if you can just try to show the relationship between those 2 things. Like, what is it about searching for this murderer and needing to take her place as heir that sort of distracts from the, male family members trying to wiggle their way in. Yeah, I mean, I like the premise overall, so just a bit of tightening there to really show, like, the relationships, I think will help. Um, let's keep going. So Fiona, ooh, all right. Let's see. So I think this is going to be Ailey. I hope that's right. Okay, so Ailey Moss, vampire, who owns an occult bookstore in the Lights district of Redbower, a small town that was founded as an experiment to see if vampires, witches, and werewolves can live together in harmony alongside humans. Ailey, oh, thank you. Yes, that's right. Yay! It's been a long time since I've played with those letters like that. Okay, so Ailey still has a foot in both worlds, as she has never killed anyone. So she feels like a failure as a vampire, and yet she is not human now either, as she was turned over 700 years ago. When her daylighter, which is a human servant, disappears, she must get her back and either become fully vampire or continue to retain as much of her humanity as she can. So, one of the things I like to do, is make sure that, we don't have to use, like, too many in-world terms in the premise. Now, this is more kinda thinking, like, for later, like, when it might become marketing copy. Now, I don't know that, daylighter would be a bad way. I think we could kind of infer enough from that, so that might work. Um, but I don't we wouldn't really want to, like, put in parentheticals what they are, so we'd wanna try to work that into the premise itself, but, okay, let me step back, let me see if I can get, what the promises of this premise is. So, we've got a vampire, a human servant, um, witches, werewolves, so paranormal, um, looks pretty decidedly adult, so, um, I'm gonna say paranormal adult. Vampire fantasy with mental health themes? Well, I love that specificity. So, yeah, basically, vampire fantasy, I mean, paranormal, um, it's a sub part of that genre, so, um, let's see. So you could just say vampire Ailey Moss owns an occult bookstore. So there we don't have to put in parentheses anything, we can just make it read more seamlessly. So, okay, so we have some background information here, and I'm not sure how necessary that's going to be to keep in quite as is, it might be kind of implied. Uh, I don't mind it as an explanation of the town though either. It just does like lengthen the premise. So if we're trying to kind of make it a quick, like something you could put on a post-it note, make it easy for you to really be guided by this premise, we might want to tighten that a little bit. We still want it to be able to be read by someone who isn't you. So let's see. So vampire, let's just say, I'm just gonna do that. So vampire Ailey Moss owns an cult bookstore in the Lights District. In how about the Lights District? That might be a little bit too in world. Like, I'm not exactly sure what that means, and I'm not sure if I can infer enough about it on its own. So what if you just said, um, Vampire Ailey Moss owns an occult cult bookstore in a small town that was founded as an experiment, um, to see if vampires, witches, and werewolves can live in harmony alongside humans. Um, I mean, that might work. There might be a shorter way to say this, and if that could be tweaked and twiddled down, but that could already work because it's already getting it down to a manageable length. Um, but this really just says where she lives, and it doesn't say like what that means yet. So I'm wondering if we can piece some of this idea into that first sentence, the idea that Ailey still has a foot in both worlds. Um, maybe and like as a vampire that's never killed anyone, Ailey Moss. Well, okay, that's a little clunky, but just trying to show you ways of how there might be something to we some way to weave that in there. Ailey still has a foot in both worlds as she's never killed anyone, so she feels. So I think your premise probably really just starts with these second two sentences. This is just the background information. So I guess what we really want to do here is weave if necessary some of this information into the other two sentences. So here you could start vampire Ailey Moss, um an occult bookstore owner, still has a foot in both worlds as she has never killed anyone. And then you could maybe uh or maybe we don't even have to say has a foot in both worlds. It could simply be vampire Ailey Moss, owner of an occult bookstore. Um, maybe something about the experiment, but we'll see. uh, has never or feels like a failure as a vampire since she's never killed anyone, but she's not human either. And then that already shows that she has a foot in both worlds, so we don't have to restate that. And then, yeah, I mean, you could probably leave that in. So she's not human now either. She was turned over. Let's see, and she is not human now either since she was turned over 700 years ago. Then, when her daylighter, you could just say human servant, honestly. Just leave that out for now. It's something that it's the in-world term for it in your story, and that'll come through. But right now, we're just trying like, what's the easiest way to understand this in the premise? And so when her human servant disappears, she must get her back and either become fully vampire or continue to retain as much of her humanity as she can. Okay, so once we whittle that down to something like maybe just those 2 lines, maybe weaving in what you need from that first sentence to provide just a hint of that promise that's there, and then see what you can do to, show the connection here. Like, why is becoming fully vampire or retaining her humanity necessary for finding this servant? So obviously we can't like I get that that's probably in the full um story, and that's all explained very well and it takes many words. But is there a way to maybe just hint at the reason that her um that finding her servant and getting her back is going to take like this kind of really impossible choice from her? I think that will help show like what's really at stake there, or why these are the stakes. Um because right now I don't know enough about this world or anything, and obviously we don't want to pack it all into the premise, but in a simple way that anyone reading this could understand. How could you kind of explain those stakes very succinctly? I know it's not asking for much. But if there's a way you can show that connection to, why it would take this, that would be, um, I think that would make it really tight. So those are the directions I'll leave you with for now. Um, let's see. We've got some comments. So interesting premises so far. Yes, agree. I love these so far. Um, okay, so Ash says okay, I think so back up in the, this one, Josette's premise, I think it needs some more information about grandmother's reputation. Okay, yeah, that could be a really good, um, route to go to, like, what is the meaning of the grandmother being found dead? We don't really know the stakes of that yet other than obviously it's, like, personal to the granddaughter, right? So, yeah, that could help, or maybe that could help weave in some of the, um, like, what the stakes are with these male family members, so, yeah, good comment there. Greetings from Mystic, Connecticut. Greetings. She's 700 years old. Okay, so I think we're going back to Fiona's. She's 700 years old. I think surname and name should belong to that era. Ah, sure. Um, I don't know if these do or not, but, um, that might be a good thing to check. Okay. Okay, let's look at Emirs. In an alternate New York City, a city where mages are oppressed, an immortal detective pretending he's human, and a magical mage hunter pretending he doesn't have magic have to solve the murder of a high profile politician, risking their jobs and cultivated lies if they don't reveal the truth. One sentence. I like it. Okay, so we've got an urban fantasy adult. Urban fantasy murder mystery, right. Sure, the last time I said that, it wasn't there, and this time I don't say it, it's like, okay. But yes, murder mystery, exactly. So, great. It delivers on those promises. I think what I'm looking for in this, I kind of wanna know, again, the connection to these stakes. What how does this particular, murder do this. And it may not be necessary to put that in a premise. However, right, I'm trying to do these as guiding premises. So that's not just to pique the interest of readers, although it might very well become part of that later on. But these are for us on the back end as writers to make sure that they are doing their job in keeping us on the right track for the right kind of story that's delivering on all the kinds of promises and the right conflict and stuff that it promises. So this is promising a murder mystery with some really fun things surrounding that, like these two detectives, or a detective and a mage hunter who are kind of at odds with one another. So that part's really fun, um, and that'll help you deliver on this. But now, what is it that makes this different from the others, I guess, is kind of where I'm coming from with it because, um, like, where mages are oppressed, so I'm guessing this isn't the norm to have, a mage hunter with magic, but I'm not sure what it is about this particular murder that's that's making it particularly, like, high stakes. So, I think how might we do this? We could do well, you could split it into 2 sentences here, that would be fine. So you could split into 2 sentences to say something about, like, what happens if they don't solve this murder, um, kind of just externally otherwise, like, what's the grander main conflict of it besides their personal conflicts. I do love that that is in there though, so I would keep that, but, if you split it into 2 sentences, you could maybe have a little bit more in there about what's so urgent or necessary about solving this particular murder, um, other than just, like, it's their jobs. Um, what is it about this one that actually makes them risk their jobs and the lies. So I believe, like, meaning, outing the truths about themselves. So what is it that, like, does that, and what makes this so crucial? So I think that's what I'm looking for in this, is I wanna know a little bit more about what's making that, uh, such a high stakes murder, especially for, like, a detective who just does this. Now, I get that's just kind of the murder mystery thing. You have a murder and it needs to be solved. But we like to know, like, what makes it really personal to them or why this one's special. And that's what's going to level up this premise for you into something that helps you understand more about this story and where it could, where it could go or how those stakes could be presented. Um, okay, let me check what we've got here. Okay, interesting distinction. How would you change a premise to be reader facing? Is that a completely different process? It's not a completely different process. I mean, we're already kind of thinking reader facing in that we're not trying to put in, like, too many in world terms. And we're trying to kind of clarify and tighten just with what we've got. So often, this premise work does actually work reader facing. Um, Sometimes it has to be massaged just a little bit, like, so, let me okay, so we're on J Freeze, let me go back up, though, to, yeah, Fiona's. Okay, so, like, words like daylighter and stuff in some ways might be okay in a reader facing premise, like in, marketing copy and such, just because it kind of already helps give the vibe. Um, like there's this term for them, and daylighter is one of those that is pretty intuitive. Like, we don't have to think too hard to figure out what that might mean, although we do need to know that it's her servant specifically, so that was more important for this, but, um, and marketing copy can be a little bit longer too, although we also like pretty short and concise marketing copy that hooks us right away, so that's where this work can and tightening it real well can help with that too. So, it can do double duty. Sometimes there just might be some considerations that you would do a little bit differently for a reader facing one. So thanks for that question. Okay, we've got on Emir's, we've got uh, a comment theory about the politician. He or she wants to change the status quo for the better for the mages. Right. So like that could clearly be a motive there. Maybe that's it. Maybe, the motivation there, I think, is what um, we need to understand, because otherwise, if they're risking their jobs and, uh, these lies, being outed, we wanna know, like, what makes them do that, or at least have a hint at that. So, yeah, good comment there from Scarlett. Alright. J Freeze. Following the events of book 1, so we've got a book 2. Mary must stay out of her brother's hands and look into his plans while learning her friends are, in fact, not better off without her. So I've worked with I've worked with Jeffries previously, so I am familiar with the events of book 1, but that does not mean that's what we want in a premise, because it doesn't tell us anything. So we still want to focus on just this book. So what are the like if we need something of this, what are the events of book 1 that need to be stated there? And before I get too much further, I'll say fantasy and, we've got another brother, so we've got probably YA considerations here, and it is delivering on that. A little bit of unfair advantage because I do know where this one's coming from, but it still delivers on that either way. So back to following the events of book 1. So, if there's something important there to pull out, like, um, following the, I don't know, destruction of her home or like whatever it would be. Um, that would be something that you could state if it's relevant to the current plot line, or kind of a need to know like when in time this one is happening, that relates and connects everything else that the premise is stating. So Mary must stay out of her brother's hands and look into his plans while learning her friends are, in fact, not better off without her. So I think, um, what we're missing here is kind of the external plot mostly. We have staying out of her brother's hands, but why? Sneak in a descriptor there, or like Mary must stay out of her like controlling brother's hands, or um whatever it is, you could add a little descriptor in there so that we understand like why she would need to do that. Just at least a hint toward that direction. And then look into his plans. Well, his plans for what? I think is probably the next natural question there. So, how can we get more specific? Because more specificity, while also being clear and not just like dumping in a whole bunch of in-world terms, is going to be the thing that helps a premise that like isn't just a general like, well, that could be any story, right? It's going to be one that's actually more specific. So, while learning her friends are in fact not better off without her. I mean, I love that, of course, for the internal stakes there. That portion again, maybe just specifying. So maybe just kind of replacing like while learning her friends. I mean, it doesn't have to be that exact phrase, but just what could be some more specificity there? Like, what's teaching her that? That might be something. of a direction to make it more specific that you could go in. So yeah, I think s mostly, and this is what I see a lot when, we're writing a premise based on some nebulous ideas and we're not quite sure what the story is yet. We kinda stick in those generals. But if you can start forcing yourself to make it more specific, that's where that premise might actually start shaping up into like, "Oh, this could sustain a full story." So yeah. So I think at this point, it doesn't show that it can sustain a whole story, but if you just make some of these pieces more specific, I think it would, kind of force you to have to define some of those, which might define it better for your story as well. And then, or make force you to kind of like brainstorm more of that for your story if you don't have it yet, and then, and then you can replace some of the more generalization things with more specifics. And yeah, I think that'll help get you closer to that guiding premise. All right. We've got Rogers. Tori, a cyborg, mourns the death of her parents and former life as she embarks on a journey to unlock her humanity and ability to love against the background of a galactic civil war. And Roger had some snuck in some additional notes about this one, so we'll see what we can do. Um, Okay. Tori, a cyborg, mourns the death of her parents and former life as she embarks on a journey to unlock her humanity and ability to love against the background of galactic civil war. Um, I mean, I think it's already kind of doing a good job of a hook there, like for what it's promising, right? So we've got promised is a sci-fi cyborg story. We've got a galactic civil war, so something pretty epic. And definitely more adult in nature the way it looks. If we come down here, we've got, yeah, sci-fi space opera. So yes, something kind of grand like that and adult. So yes, it is making good on those promises. Um, so I think I want to know more about embarks on a journey to unlock her humanity. Um, Maybe like what is the impetus of this? Or, so maybe think more about like your inciting incident. What kicks this off? Like, what makes this kind of a must-do thing? Um, I mean, unlocking her humanity is obviously a pretty good, motive there, but if there's anything that can kinda bring that more, like, why now? Like, why is this something, she didn't do before? Why is it something she's just doing now? Like, what are those kind of stakes and motivations around it? So, sneaking more of those in. And again, we've got one sentence here, so that's great. So we can add another sentence if needed to kind of get like the two halves, kind of like this is what happens, this is what incites everything, and now this is like these are the stakes and how it's personal to her and what that like means for the conflict of the story. So, okay, so let's just look at some of these extra notes. So, okay, so a cyborg cloned human woman with a part organic or part cybernetic brain. Okay. And I mean, I don't know that we need, um, I mean, I think cyborg is still sufficient in the premise. Her parents who loved her were murdered as a consequence of the galactic civil war. Okay. So there might be something in that to add in as motivation. Um, was trained to be and functioned as an unemotional servitor functioning at the edge of society. She's thrust into a highly visible leadership role. Okay, so this sounds kind of like that impetus, right? Maybe the inciting incident there. So that might be something to play with, probably in like a first sentence of this premise. Counters the awakening of her emotions, bigotry from others, jealousy, conceit, deception, danger, physical and mental abuse, and the real possibility of death. Um, yeah. I guess, do we know what what awakens those emotions? That could also be another impetus. I'm not sure which one is, like, the more important here for the main conflict of the story, but maybe think about that or think about how you might kinda weave that in. I mean, Unlock Her Humanity does sort of, help weave that in too, so maybe if we understand that, let's see, where was that? That she's put into a highly visible leadership role. So maybe like Tori um ignored like service cyborg or something to kind of show that before state uh is like thrust into a highly visible leadership role, you know, just after the death of her parents or something. And then I don't know if you have to say former life because that would be implied uh in that. And then you could talk about how, I don't know, maybe an unexpected consequence or something is this, like, awakening of her emotions, um, in this role or whatever causes that. Okay, we have a Jean Valjean moment, with an unearned act of great kindness. So if that's, uh, I guess I'm not sure which of these is the full, like, is the thing that sort of kicks everything off. So whichever one that is, that's what I would include kind of in that first line if possible, if it can fit there. And then maybe just kind of hint at some of these other things, which you're already doing in some of this, right? Like unlocking her humanity and ability to love. So some of that's in there and that could be a way to take care of some of that as you have it, but it'll be strengthened once we have like what the impetus for all of this is and kind of how like what some of the motives are there. Um, and discovers love for a work colleague. Okay. So maybe a romantic subplot there, the way it looks. And that may or may not come into the premise. It might not have to, but if it serves as maybe like, part of this unlocking or something like that, or it kind of kicks that off, that could be a reason to bring it in. Otherwise, it may just not go in the premise, and that's okay. It doesn't mean it's not part of your story. It just means that, we're just trying to really connect that big picture all together to Tori and how it matters to her. So I think go with some of that. Think about your main inciting incident here and how that kind of kicks everything off and use that as your um as a way to kind of organize the motivations around that. And I think that will make more sense. Okay, so we've got okay, I'm in the dark about the force of opposition, then again, oh, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so I mean, right, like one of the main things we're seeing in some of these is just like what is that opposition and what are this like motives and stakes in a way that connects everything. All right, we've got Dana's a woman 4 years away from retirement, transferred, forced to work in another field office, has to fight to survive the unnatural forces gathering against her to ensure her downfall. She's determined to battle those entities and survive the terrors directed towards her to reach her ultimate goal. All right. So I think this one again needs way more specificity, but so okay, it's got okay, unnatural forces, retirement. I'm gonna say it's paranormal adult, sci-fi horror adult. Okay, so forces gathering against her. Okay. So I'm not saying it's that far off or anything because I mean I was pretty close on that. But the horror aspect, I'm not sure I was getting quite from this. You do have survived the terrors, um, which might have tipped me off. I guess I just wasn't feeling quite the full weight of that. So let's let's understand what she's retiring from, if that matters. I mean, I don't know what this field office is. So, um, maybe just identify some of these things and that might help this out a bunch. So, what kind of unnatural forces? We want to know what this story is promising, what the main um, what we're getting into. So, there are some readers who maybe don't like zombies, for instance, and some who won't then read anything with zombies. So if the unnatural forces are zombies, I'm not saying it is, but just for example, if the unnatural forces are zombies, we maybe need to know that. I mean, if it's a big mystery, I guess it depends how you present it, right? We want to give readers as much information as basically the main character has so that they're not just left in the dark and don't know how to care about things. So we want to know how much of a threat these unnatural forces are. If they're not really definable as like a, like creature that everybody knows in some fashion, what could you give us about like what's unnatural about them? That might be a way to make it more specific. And why are they trying to ensure her downfall? Like, what is this woman's legacy? What are those stakes? Like, why does this what does she have to fall from? What are the stakes there? So actually kind of thinking back about the comment about the grandmother's reputation in that earlier premise, like I think we need to know a little bit about uh what kind of what kind of thing she's retiring from, what she's actually built with all of this, and why being transferred this close to retirement to another field office is like, maybe a bad thing, or like is I don't know, somebody got something out for her other than these unnatural forces, or is that who caused it? I'm just not sure how a lot of these things quite connect yet. Okay, so she's determined to battle those entities and survive the terrors directed towards her to reach her ultimate goal. So I still just don't think I know like what kind of skills she might have or what kind of battles I might even be expecting. So that would be a really good thing. Now, I am projecting a little bit out to the reader like side of this where if I'm thinking about, readers getting hooked on this, um, what would they be thinking? Because that's a great way to understand what you're promising and what you're promising those readers and what they can expect. So so yeah, anytime you're thinking about promises in a premise, think about readers and what they would understand from it. So that's why having an outside reader of it can be so helpful. Um, so as an outside reader, I'm just not quite sure what I would be expecting in this as a horror. Let's see, was it yeah, sci-fi horror. So I kinda wanna know what vibes it's gonna give, right? And I think I'm missing the vibes. I'm missing what, flavor of sci-fi horror this one is. So, that's what I would sneak in through more specificity. Um, the structure otherwise, I mean, I think is mostly there perhaps, depending on how this part about her situation with the retirement and the transfer, is presented, but yeah, if this is like I'm kind of guessing this might be the inciting incident where, um, unexpected 4 years from retirement suddenly transferred. How does that like, what does that mean for her? What does it crush her? Does it, what does that do? So that might be a way to, help you come at kinda how all of this matters, and then just get more specific in what these are so that we get more of that flavor, and I think that will, really help guide what this story could be for you. Okay, I might have time for maybe a last one or two here. So, um, okay, checking comments again. Oh, you're trying to say that in the shortest excerpt, it was missing the oppositional element. Yes, yes, exactly. But I do think it was something that I've been noticing in more of these as well. All right, Megan's. In a land of dreams, a cowardly boy named Reese is suddenly tasked to protect a dreamer known as the Lucid after his home is invaded by nightmares. He must learn to overcome his fears to become a true knight or risk the destruction of his whole world. I love that. So we've got a boy, so right, middle grade fantasy here. Yep, perfect. So we're making some good promises and they're shining through correctly. In the land of dreams, a cowardly boy named Reese is suddenly tasked to protect a dreamer known as the Lucid after his home is invaded by nightmares. He must learn to overcome his fears to become a true knight or risk the destruction of his whole world. Um, Mostly I love this, like, no notes. Just kidding. I'm always looking to improve everything no matter what. So, um, actually, what I think could be a little bit tighter here is, I mean, overcome his fears. I don't know how specific we need to go there, but maybe it could just kind of be like a type of specific fear. Um, he's tasked to protect a dreamer. So I don't know, Megan, if you were watching my other premise videos, but I kind of did the same thing in the example I was developing, in that I kind of had like, um, my character Rose is, like suddenly like thrust into command. So it's kind of something that happens to her, which is fine. And that's, that is the nature of an inciting incident. It's something that happens to the protagonist. But I'm wondering if there's a slightly more specific way to say this so we kind of understand like how he comes um kind of comes into this. So, I mean, his home is invaded by nightmares, but then he's tasked to protect a dreamer. So, I might just kind of be missing like how those things connect exactly. And it does, again, it doesn't have to be exactly, it doesn't have to be fleshed out in extreme detail and info dumping. But what could we add to kind of show like what situation um like led to this is suddenly tasked? Maybe we just need to make it not a passive construction, right? So maybe instead of he is suddenly tasked, we just need to say like who or what tasks him to protect this dreamer. um it may not be entirely relevant to like in a premise, but it might just kind of help one possible way to reconstruct this to show why, uh, like why this suddenly happens to him. Um, I mean, not that there has to be a why for these inciting incidents necessarily, like spelled out in the premise. It's just in this case, I kind of want to know like how he gets pulled into this. Like his home is invaded by nightmares, but he must not be like it sounds, I mean, that sounds dangerous, right? So like how does he survive? So maybe it's saying something like that. Like, um, well, here's so in the land of dreams, so after his home is invaded by unless you flip the construction, something like, after his home is invaded by nightmares, a cowardly boy named Reese is pulled into the land of dreams where he's tasked to protect a dreamer known as the Lucid or something like that. I don't know if that makes it entirely better, but at least it would kind of show like what I mean by when I'm saying like how does he kind of get there? I guess after his home is invaded by nightmares, that might help a little bit. And then what are these fears that he's overcoming? If you could name one or give us a little bit more of a clue of the flavor of those fears. I mean, nightmares are scary, so I can see that totally being like, just the fear, but I don't know, if there's something more specific there, we might wanna add it. Or risk the destruction of his whole world. So I'm guessing his whole world is the world that's not in the land of dreams. That might be okay as is. I guess I kind of wanna know, like, how the nightmares are this much of a threat. Whether that needs to go in the premise or not could be up for debate. Again, we don't need, like it'll be answered in the story, and we don't need the whole story in there, but I kind of wanna know a little bit more about the nature of these stakes so that, thinking about writing this, like, what would it be? What would I need to kinda keep my mind on for what the threat is here? Clearly, it's like these nightmares. They somehow, are connected to the destruction of his whole world. So are they getting, um, I don't know, more powerful? Are they breaking free of some kind of, if they're no longer contained just in nightmares? It kinda sounds like that since, his home is invaded by them. So maybe that's already kind of in there, and maybe we don't need too much more, but there could perhaps be, um, yeah, just a little bit more clue about what's going on here to understand how the destruction of the world could come about, or at least be able to kind of infer that a little further. So I really like this, but those would be maybe my suggestions for just clarifying some of those stakes a little bit more and maybe strengthening this construction here. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end here. I know there are plenty more that were sent to me that I didn't get to today, but thank you for all your submissions. And I don't know, maybe we could do this again at some point, and I can look at more of them. For now, I hope that gives you some idea with some real examples of how you can go about strengthening your premise. I think some of the main takeaways were things like um, not not leaving things too general or vague, and making sure you're getting kind of what that main inciting incident, what the impetus is for everything, right up front in there, as well as making sure those stakes are connected to what your protagonist is dealing with as far as you show it in the premise. So those would all be some takeaways that I'm kind of seeing in the themes of what we saw today. And yeah, I hope that helps you guys in forming your guiding premises and making sure that they are useful to you as an author. And it probably gives you a little bit more of a clue into how you might then turn that into something that can work for your marketing copy. So, yeah, thank you. You're also welcome. All right. Well, I will see you guys again another time. I will try to maybe do these a little bit more often. So we'll see how it goes. Bye.